She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. My sister's voice rang through my phone speaker, followed by that careless laugh I'd heard 1,000 times before. I sat frozen in my kitchen in Portland, Maine, staring at the screen. The voice note wasn't meant for me. It was supposed to go to my mom, but Vanessa had clicked the wrong contact. For 3 seconds, I just listened to her giggle, talking about me like I was some kind of endless bank account. Then I saved it. My hand moved on instinct, pressing that little download button before the message could disappear into the digital void. My name is Nora. I'm 29 years old, and I'd spent the last 4 years paying for everything my family touched. I worked as a medical billing specialist at Granthera AI, a healthcare analytics company that processed insurance claims for hospitals across New England. The pay was decent, nothing extraordinary, but I'd always been good with money. I lived in a small 1-bedroom apartment, drove a 12-year-old sedan, and brought lunch from home every single day. While everyone else at work grabbed takeout or hit up the trendy lunch spots downtown, I ate my homemade sandwiches at my desk and saved every extra dollar. My sister Vanessa was 25, 4 years younger, and she'd never saved a dime in her entire life. She worked part-time at a boutique clothing store, the kind of place where she spent more on employee discounts than she earned in wages. She lived with my mom in the house I'd grown up in, a 3-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town. Neither of them worked full-time. Neither of them seemed to care. The voice note kept playing in my head long after I'd heard it. She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. That laugh. That stupid, thoughtless laugh. I set my phone down and pressed my palms against the cool laminate countertop, trying to breathe through the anger building in my chest. This wasn't the first time I'd felt used, but it was the first time I'd heard them say it out loud. All those years of helping out, of being the responsible one, of making sure the lights stayed on and the rent got paid. And this was what they thought of me. A safety net. A fool. The electric bill was due in 9 days. I'd been paying it for 3 years straight, ever since my mom called me crying one winter evening, saying they were going to shut off the power if someone didn't come up with $300 by Friday. I'd paid it that time, and the next time, and every time after that. The bill had my name on the account now because I'd added myself as a co-holder just to make the payments easier. My mom had been so grateful. Vanessa had barely acknowledged it. I opened my banking app and stared at the automated payment scheduled for the 23rd. 1 click, and I could cancel it. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to think. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed replaying every conversation, every time I'd handed over money without question. The time Vanessa needed $400 for car repairs, and I'd sent it within an hour. The time my mom called about a medical bill she couldn't cover, and I'd put it on my credit card. The time they'd asked me to chip in for Vanessa's birthday dinner at some upscale restaurant I couldn't afford, and I'd done it anyway because I didn't want to be the one who ruined the celebration. I'd told myself it was what family did. You helped each other. You showed up. You made sacrifices. But they'd never sacrificed anything for me. When I'd needed help moving into my apartment, Vanessa had been too busy. When I'd asked my mom to watch my cat for a weekend so I could attend a work conference, she'd said it was too much responsibility. When I'd mentioned I was struggling to pay off my student loans, they'd changed the subject. The voice note sat in my saved messages like a piece of evidence. She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call Vanessa right then and demand an explanation, ask her how she could be so callous, so entitled. But I knew what would happen. She'd apologize, say it was just a joke, make me feel like I was overreacting. My mom would take her side, tell me I was being too sensitive. They'd gaslight me into believing I was the problem, and within a week, everything would go back to normal. I'd keep paying, they'd keep taking, and nothing would change. Unless I changed it. The thought arrived quietly, but it settled into my mind with a weight I couldn't ignore. I didn't have to keep doing this. I didn't owe them my financial stability. I didn't owe them anything. The next morning, I went to work like usual, but everything felt different. I sat at my desk processing claims, my fingers moving across the keyboard on autopilot while my brain churned through possibilities. My coworker Jessica stopped by my cubicle around 10 with her usual coffee in hand. "You okay?" she asked. "You look like you're plotting something." I glanced up and forced a smile. Just thinking. About what? Family stuff. She wrinkled her nose in sympathy. "Say no more. Family's always complicated." If she only knew. I spent my lunch break looking at my finances, really looking at them for the first time in months. Without the electric bill, I'd have an extra $170 a month. That didn't sound like much, but over a year it was over $2,000. Money I could put toward my loans, or save, or use for something that actually mattered to me. But it wasn't really about the money. It was about the principle. It was about being seen as a person instead of a wallet. I went home that evening and sat on my couch with a glass of wine staring at my phone. The due date loomed. 9 days had become 8. Soon it would be 7, then 6. The countdown felt like a ticking clock, each day bringing me closer to a decision I wasn't sure I had the courage to make. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. How could I? If I said it out loud, if I admitted that I was thinking about letting the power get shut off at my mom's house just to teach my sister a lesson, people would think I was cruel. They'd tell me I was being petty. That family was more important than pride. But they didn't know what it felt like to be taken for granted, year after year. Growing up, Vanessa had always been the favorite. It wasn't something anyone said outright, but it was obvious in 1,000 small ways. She got new clothes for school while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins. She got a car for her 16th birthday while I took the bus. When she wanted to go to cosmetology school, my mom had helped her pay for it. When I'd wanted to go to a 4-year university, I'd been told we couldn't afford it, so I'd gone to community college and worked 2 jobs to cover the costs. I used to think it was because Vanessa was the baby of the family, the one who needed more help. But now I wondered if it was just because she'd never been expected to be responsible. She'd learned early on that someone would always bail her out, and that someone was usually me. My mom had raised us alone after my dad left when I was 7. I remembered those early years, the stress, the way she'd cried at the kitchen table while sorting through bills. I'd promised myself I'd never be a burden to her. I'd worked hard in school, gotten decent grades, found a stable job. I'd done everything right. Vanessa had done everything wrong, and somehow, she'd still ended up with an easier life. When she'd dropped out of cosmetology school halfway through, my mom had just shrugged and said it wasn't for everyone. When she'd quit 3 different jobs in 2 years because she didn't like her managers, my mom had sympathized and told her she deserved better. When she'd racked up credit card debt buying clothes and concert tickets, my mom had helped her negotiate payment plans. And when they couldn't pay the electric bill, they'd called me. I thought about the voice note again, the casual cruelty of it. She'll cover the bills anyway. They didn't even see me as generous. They saw me as predictable, reliable, a sure thing. That week, I started pulling back in small ways, testing the waters. When Vanessa texted me asking if I wanted to grab dinner, I said I was busy. When my mom called to chat, I kept the conversation short. I didn't offer help. I didn't ask if they needed anything. I just existed on the edges of their lives instead of at the center, and I waited to see if they'd notice. They didn't. 5 days before the due date, my mom called me around 8 in the evening. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey, sweetie," she said, her voice warm. "How are you?" "I'm fine. What's up?" "Nothing much. Just wanted to check in. We haven't talked in a few days." "Yeah, work's been busy." There was a pause, and I could tell she wanted to ask me for something but didn't know how to bring it up. The silence stretched between us, awkward and loaded. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, even though I already knew the answer. "Oh, you know, same old stuff. Bills piling up, trying to make ends meet. It's hard, Nora. I don't know how you do it." I clenched my jaw. This was the setup. This was where she'd ease into asking me for money without actually asking, making me feel guilty enough to offer it myself. "You manage," I said simply. Another pause. "Well, I should let you go. Just wanted to hear your voice." "Okay. Talk later." I hung up and sat there feeling something close to satisfaction. She'd expected me to jump in and offer help, and I hadn't. For the first time in years, I'd let her flounder, but the satisfaction didn't last long. It was quickly replaced by guilt, that familiar weight pressing down on my chest. What if they really couldn't pay the bill this time? What if the power got shut off and my mom couldn't afford to get it turned back on? What if Vanessa lost all the food in the fridge, or my mom couldn't charge her phone in an emergency? I told myself it wasn't my problem. They were adults. They'd figure it out. But the guilt gnawed at me anyway. 3 days before the due date, Vanessa texted me. "Hey, can you send me like $50? I'm short on gas money and I need to get to work." I stared at the message for a long time. $50. It was nothing, really. I could afford it without even thinking about it. But if I sent it, I'd be right back where I started. I'd be the person who always said yes, who always made things easier, who never set boundaries. I typed out a response. "Sorry, I'm tight on money this month." It was a lie. I had plenty of money. But it felt good to say no. She didn't respond right away, and when she finally did, her message was short. "Okay, no worries. No worries." Like it didn't matter. Like she'd just find someone else to ask. 2 days before the due date, I got a notification on my phone. The electric company had sent a reminder that payment was due soon. I opened the app and looked at the scheduled payment, my finger hovering over the cancel button. I thought about that voice note again. I thought about every time I'd handed over money and gotten nothing but silence in return. I thought about the years I'd spent being invisible, being taken for granted, being used. And then I pressed cancel. The payment disappeared from the schedule. The money stayed in my account. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one in control. The due date came and went. I didn't hear from my mom. I didn't hear from Vanessa. The electric company would send them a notice, a warning that payment was overdue. They'd have a few days to figure it out before the power actually got shut off. Maybe they'd pay it themselves. Maybe they'd borrow money from someone else. Maybe they'd finally realize they couldn't rely on me forever. Or maybe the lights would go out, and they'd learn what it felt like to be left in the dark. On the evening the power was supposed to be disconnected, I drove past my mom's house. I didn't plan to. I told myself I was just running errands, that I happened to be in the neighborhood. But the truth was, I needed to see it. I needed to know if I'd actually gone through with it, if I'd really let this happen. It was almost 7 when I turned onto their street, the sky fading into that deep purple that comes right before full darkness. The houses on the block were lit up, warm light glowing from windows, televisions flickering behind curtains. Normal evening life. Except for my mom's house. It sat dark and silent, every window black. No porch light. No glow from the living room. Nothing. I slowed the car to a crawl, my heart pounding as I stared at the lifeless building. They were home. I could see my mom's car in the driveway and Vanessa's beat-up sedan parked on the street. But inside, everything was dark. The power was off. I'd done it. I'd actually let it happen. For a moment, I felt a rush of something that might have been triumph. They'd finally hit a wall. They'd finally faced a consequence. Maybe now they'd understand that I wasn't just some endless resource they could tap whenever they felt like it. But then I saw movement near the front window. A shadow, barely visible in the dim light from the street. Someone was standing there looking out. I couldn't tell if it was my mom or Vanessa, but whoever it was seemed to be staring directly at my car. I hit the gas and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. When I got home, I collapsed on my couch and let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. My phone sat on the coffee table, silent. No calls, no texts. They hadn't reached out to me at all. Maybe they were too embarrassed. Maybe they didn't want to admit they'd been caught off guard. Or maybe they still didn't think I had anything to do with it. Maybe they thought the power company had made a mistake, or that someone had forgotten to pay the bill, or that it was just bad luck. I wanted them to know it was me. I wanted them to realize that I'd stopped carrying them. But at the same time, I was terrified of the confrontation that would come if they found out. The next morning, I woke up to 3 missed calls from my mom and a string of texts from Vanessa. Mom's messages were frantic. "Nora, call me when you get this. It's important." Vanessa's were angry. "Where the hell are you? We need to talk." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen. This was it. They knew. I called my mom first, my stomach churning with anxiety. She answered on the first ring. "Nora, thank God. I've been trying to reach you." "What's going on?" "The power's out. They shut it off yesterday and I don't know what happened. I thought the bill was paid. It's always paid." Her voice cracked, and I felt that familiar stab of guilt. She sounded genuinely confused, like she couldn't understand how this had happened. "Did you check with the electric company?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Yes, I called them this morning. They said the payment didn't go through, but I don't understand. You always take care of it." There it was. You always take care of it. Not thank you. Not I appreciate everything you do. Just an assumption, a statement of fact. I always took care of it, so of course it should have been taken care of. "Maybe there was a problem with the payment," I said carefully. "Did they say how much you owe?" "Almost $200 with the late fees." "Nora, I don't have that kind of money right now. Can you help us out? Just this once?" Just this once. Like the hundreds of other times had never happened. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was the moment. I could back down, apologize, say there must have been a technical issue, and send the money immediately. Everything would go back to normal. They'd never have to know I'd done this on purpose. Or I could stand my ground. "I can't," I said quietly. Silence. "What do you mean you can't?" "I mean I don't have the money to spare right now. I've got my own bills to deal with. But Nora, we don't have power. We can't cook. We can't charge our phones. Vanessa has to work tonight, and she needs to straighten her hair and do her makeup. How is she supposed to do that in the dark?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. Vanessa's hair and makeup were the priority, not the fact that I'd been quietly funding their lives for years. Not the fact that they'd never once thanked me or acknowledged the sacrifice. "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. I was sorry that it had come to this. I was sorry that they'd pushed me so far, but I wasn't sorry for finally saying no. "Nora, please, you've always helped us before. Why are you being like this?" "I can't keep doing this, Mom. I've been paying your electric bill for 3 years. I've been covering things for you and Vanessa whenever you ask. And I'm tired." She was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke again, her voice was cold. "I can't believe you'd do this to your own family." The accusation hit me harder than I expected. I'd known she'd be upset, but I hadn't anticipated the venom in her tone. "I'm not doing anything to you," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "I'm just not doing something for you anymore. There's a difference. You're being selfish." The word stung, but I didn't back down. "Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm just tired of being taken advantage of. She hung up without another word. I sat there staring at my phone, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to call her back, to apologize, to fix things. But a stronger part of me knew that if I did, nothing would ever change. Vanessa texted me an hour later. "I can't believe you'd let this happen. You know we needed that money. You're supposed to be there for us." I didn't respond. Over the next few days, my phone blew up with messages from both of them. Some were angry, accusing me of abandoning them. Some were pleading, begging me to reconsider. Some were manipulative, trying to guilt me into giving in. I ignored them all. A week passed. Then 2. I heard through a family friend that my mom had borrowed money from a neighbor to get the power turned back on, and that Vanessa had picked up extra shifts at work to help cover bills. They were managing. They were figuring it out. Without me. And slowly, the guilt started to fade. It was replaced by something else. Something that felt a lot like relief. I wasn't responsible for them anymore. I wasn't the safety net. I was just Nora, living my own life, taking care of myself. But I knew this wasn't over. The voice note was still saved on my phone, and I hadn't forgotten what Vanessa had said. She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. They thought I was predictable. They thought I'd always come running back. I was about to prove them wrong. 3 weeks after the power had been shut off, I got a call from my Aunt Patricia. She was my mom's older sister, and we'd always had a decent relationship even though we didn't talk often. When her name popped up on my screen, I knew immediately that my mom had gotten to her. "Nora, honey, how are you doing?" Her voice was careful, measured. "I'm fine, Aunt Patricia. What's up?" "Well, I talked to your mother yesterday. She's pretty upset about what happened with the electric bill." I leaned back in my office chair and closed my eyes. Of course she'd called Patricia. My mom loved to recruit allies when she wasn't getting her way. "I'm sure she is. She said you refused to help when they really needed it. That doesn't sound like you, Nora. You've always been so responsible." There was that word again. Responsible. Like it was my defining characteristic, my obligation. "I've been helping them for years, Aunt Patricia. I just couldn't do it anymore. But they're family. Your mother raised you by herself. She sacrificed a lot for you girls." I felt anger flare in my chest. Everyone always brought up what my mom had sacrificed, but no one ever talked about what I'd given up. No one mentioned the years I'd spent being the dependable one while Vanessa got away with everything. "I know she did," I said evenly. "And I've spent the last 4 years paying her back for it. Literally." Patricia sighed. "I'm not trying to make you feel bad, sweetheart. I just think maybe you should reconsider. Your mom is really struggling right now. Then maybe Vanessa should help her. She lives there too. Vanessa doesn't make as much money as you do. That's because she works part-time and spends everything she earns on things she doesn't need." "Nora, I have to get back to work," I interrupted. "Thanks for calling." I hung up before she could say anything else. That conversation rattled me more than I wanted to admit. It wasn't just my mom and Vanessa anymore. Now other family members were getting involved, painting me as the villain. It would have been easier if they'd just been angry. But instead, they were disappointed, which somehow felt worse. That evening, I met my friend Jessica for dinner at a small Italian place downtown. I'd been avoiding social situations since the power incident, not wanting to explain what had happened, but Jessica had insisted. She knew something was wrong. "Okay, spill," she said as soon as we'd ordered. "You've been weird for weeks. What's going on?" I hesitated, then decided I needed to tell someone. I laid out the whole story. The years of financial support, the voice note, the canceled payment, the aftermath. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from surprise to something that looked like anger on my behalf. "Are you serious?" she said when I finished. "They actually expected you to keep paying indefinitely?" "Apparently." "That's insane. You did the right thing, Nora. They were using you." Hearing her say it out loud made something loosen in my chest. I'd been carrying so much doubt, so much guilt, and having someone validate my choice felt like permission to stop second-guessing myself. "My family doesn't see it that way." "Of course they don't. They're the ones benefiting from the arrangement." She leaned forward, her eyes serious. "Look, I get that it's complicated because it's family, but you can't set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. They're adults. They can figure out their own bills." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this was far from over. 2 days later, I got a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. In person." My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won out. "Fine. When and where?" "Tomorrow. Coffee shop on Bridge Street, noon." I showed up 10 minutes early, positioning myself at a corner table where I could see the door. My stomach was in knots. I'd barely seen Vanessa in the past month, and I had no idea what to expect from this meeting. She walked in at 12 on the dot, wearing a new jacket I didn't recognize, and carrying a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She spotted me immediately and made her way over, her expression hard. "Thanks for meeting me," she said, sitting down without ordering anything. "What did you want to talk about?" She folded her arms and leaned back in her chair, studying me. "I want to know what your problem is." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. What's your problem? Why are you suddenly acting like you don't care about us?" I felt my jaw tighten. "I'm not acting like I don't care. I'm just not paying your bills anymore." "Our bills," she corrected. "Mom's bills. The bills for the house where we live. The house where you live rent-free while working 20 hours a week." Her eyes flashed. "You don't know what my life is like." "You're right. I don't. Because you never talk to me unless you need something." That seemed to catch her off guard. She blinked, her expression faltering for just a second before the mask of anger slid back into place. "That's not true." "When's the last time you called just to see how I was doing? When's the last time you asked about my life, my job, anything that wasn't about you?" She didn't answer. "You sent me a voice note," I continued, my voice low but steady. "You probably don't even remember it. You were talking to Mom, but you hit my contact by mistake." Her face went pale. "What voice note?" "The one where you laughed about how I'd cover the bills anyway. How I always do." The color drained from her cheeks completely. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. "Nora, it wasn't. I didn't mean it like that." "How did you mean it?" "I was just joking around." "That's the problem, Vanessa. To you, it's a joke. My money, my time, my help. It's all just something you can laugh about. But it's my actual life. That's money I work for. Money I could be using for myself." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know you felt this way." "You never asked." We sat in silence for a moment. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the turning point. Maybe she'd apologize. Maybe she'd acknowledge what she'd taken for granted. Instead, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes and said, "So what now? You're just going to abandon us?" The manipulation was so transparent it would have been funny if it weren't so infuriating. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm setting boundaries." "Same thing." "No, it's really not." She stood up abruptly. "You know what? Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't come crying to us when you need something and no one's there for you." She walked out without another word, leaving me sitting alone at the table with my untouched coffee. I should have felt victorious. I'd stood my ground. I'd refused to be manipulated. But all I felt was tired. The next few weeks were strange. My mom and Vanessa stopped contacting me entirely, and the silence was both a relief and deeply unsettling. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for some new crisis that would pull me back into their orbit. It came in the form of a Facebook message from my cousin Derek, Aunt Patricia's son. "Hey Nora, I heard about what happened with your mom. I just wanted to check in and see if you're okay. Family stuff is complicated." I stared at the message, trying to figure out his angle. Derek and I had never been particularly close, but he'd always been kind. Maybe he was genuinely concerned. Or maybe he'd been enlisted in the campaign to make me feel guilty. "I'm fine," I typed back. "Thanks for asking." His reply came quickly. "Good. For what it's worth, I think you did what you had to do. I know how it is with them." I sat up straighter. I know how it is with them. What did that mean? "We should grab lunch sometime," he continued. "I'd like to catch up." I agreed, more out of curiosity than anything else. We met the following Saturday at a diner halfway between our places. Derek was 32, 3 years older than me, and worked as a mechanic. He'd always been the quiet one at family gatherings, content to stay in the background while everyone else fought for attention. After we'd ordered, he got straight to the point. "So, my mom told me about the electric bill situation. I'm sure she had a lot to say about it." He smiled slightly. "She did. But I've heard a lot over the years. About how much you help them out, how you're always the one they call when they need money." "It's fine," I said automatically, then caught myself. "It was fine. It's not anymore." "Good." I looked at him in surprise. "Good. Nora, I've watched this happen my whole life. Your mom always favored Vanessa. She always expected you to be the responsible one while letting Vanessa get away with murder. It's not fair, and it's not your job to keep enabling it." Hearing someone in my family say those words out loud made something crack inside me. I felt tears spring to my eyes and blinked them back quickly. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" He shrugged. "Would it have mattered? Your mom doesn't want to hear it. She's convinced that you're tough and Vanessa needs more help. She can't see that she's created this whole dynamic where you give everything and Vanessa takes everything. It's exhausting. I bet. My mom does the same thing with my brother. She acts like he's helpless, so he never has to be responsible. Meanwhile, I'm the one she calls when something breaks or she needs help moving furniture. Does it ever get easier? Setting boundaries? Yeah, eventually. But they don't like it. Be prepared for that." His words stayed with me long after lunch ended. That night, I got an email from my mom. The subject line read, "We need to talk." I almost deleted it without reading, but morbid curiosity got the better of me. The email was long, rambling, and full of accusations. She wrote about how hurt she was by my behavior, how she couldn't believe I'd turned my back on family, how Vanessa was devastated by my cruelty. She brought up every sacrifice she'd ever made for me, every difficult moment from my childhood, as if they somehow obligated me to fund their lives forever. But buried in the middle of the email, between paragraphs of guilt-tripping, was one sentence that caught my attention. Vanessa told me about the voice note. "I don't appreciate you bringing that up to hurt her." I read it 3 times, feeling anger build with each pass. She knew. She'd known about the voice note, about what Vanessa had said, and instead of acknowledging that maybe, just maybe, they'd treated me poorly, she was mad that I'd confronted Vanessa about it. I closed my laptop without responding. The next day at work, I threw myself into a project that had been sitting on my desk for weeks. It felt good to focus on something I could control, something that had clear rules and expected outcomes. Healthcare billing might have been tedious, but at least it made sense. Around 3 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Nora?" The voice was unfamiliar. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Kelly. I'm a friend of Vanessa's. She gave me your number." My guard went up immediately. Okay. Look, I'm just calling because I'm worried about her. She's been really down lately, and I know you two aren't talking right now. I was hoping maybe you could reach out to her. I closed my eyes. Of course, Vanessa had recruited one of her friends to guilt me. I appreciate your concern, but this is between me and my sister. I know. It's just, she's really struggling. She says she feels like she's lost her only support system. Something about the phrasing struck me as odd. Lost her only support system. Not lost her sister. Lost her support system. Kelly, can I ask you something? Sure. Did Vanessa tell you why we're not talking? There was a pause. She said you cut her off financially. Did she mention anything else? Like the fact that I've been supporting her and my mom for years? That I paid their electric bill every month for 3 years straight? Another pause, longer this time. She said you helped out sometimes. Sometimes. I almost laughed. I didn't just help out sometimes. I paid hundreds of dollars a month to keep their power on. I sent money whenever they asked. I've been doing this for years, and I finally stopped because I couldn't afford to keep doing it. Oh. Kelly's voice was small now. She made it sound like you just decided to be mean. I'm sure she did. After I hung up, I felt oddly vindicated. Vanessa had been spinning this to make herself look like the victim, and I'd just dismantled that narrative. But it also made me realize how many other people she'd probably told the same story to. How many family members and friends now thought I was the villain in this situation. I needed to set the record straight. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I opened Facebook and typed out a post. My hands shook as I wrote, deleting and rewriting multiple times before I finally settled on the words. I've been thinking a lot lately about family, boundaries, and what we owe each other. For the past several years, I've been financially supporting members of my family because I thought that's what you were supposed to do. I paid bills, sent money, and helped out whenever asked. But recently I realized that this arrangement wasn't sustainable, and more importantly, it wasn't appreciated. When I stopped, I was accused of abandoning my family. I was told I was selfish and cruel. So I want to be clear about something. Setting boundaries is not abandonment. Saying no is not cruelty. Taking care of yourself is not selfish. I love my family, but I can't keep sacrificing my own financial stability to support people who are capable of supporting themselves. If that makes me a bad person, then I guess I'll have to live with that. I stared at the post for 10 minutes before hitting share. My heart pounded as it went live, visible to all 347 of my Facebook friends, including multiple family members. The responses came quickly. Some people liked it. Some commented with supportive messages, but others, particularly older relatives, left comments about how family always comes first and how you should never air dirty laundry in public. My mom commented, "I'm heartbroken that you would write something like this instead of talking to us directly." I replied publicly, "I tried talking to you directly. You hung up on me." Vanessa didn't comment, but I knew she'd seen it. She unfriended me within an hour. That night my phone rang again. This time it was Aunt Patricia, and her tone was sharper than before. "Nora, what on earth were you thinking posting that on Facebook?" "I was thinking that I'm tired of being misrepresented." You made your mother sound like a terrible person." "I didn't name anyone. I just told my side of the story. Everyone knows who you're talking about. This is humiliating for her. And having everyone think I'm heartless isn't humiliating for me?" She sighed heavily. "This is family business. You don't put family business on the internet." Maybe if people hadn't been talking about me behind my back, I wouldn't have needed to. We went back and forth for another 10 minutes before she finally gave up and hung up. I felt simultaneously empowered and exhausted. Over the next few days, I got messages from various relatives. Some were supportive. My cousin Derek sent a thumbs-up emoji and the words, "Proud of you." Others were critical, telling me I'd gone too far, that I'd embarrassed the family. But the most surprising message came from someone I barely knew. Vanessa's coworker, a woman named Brianna, who I'd met once at a family barbecue. "Hey, Nora. I saw your post. I don't know if this matters, but I think you should know that Vanessa has been bragging at work about how she never has to pay for anything because her sister covers all her bills. She's been laughing about it. I always thought it was weird, but after seeing your post, I wanted you to know." I read the message 3 times, feeling my blood pressure rise with each pass. She'd been bragging, laughing about it. The voice note had been bad enough, but this was something else entirely. This wasn't a private moment of thoughtlessness. This was Vanessa actively mocking me to people she worked with, turning my generosity into a joke. I needed more information. I needed to know exactly what had been said and to how many people. But more than that, I needed Vanessa to understand that actions had consequences. I drove to my mom's house unannounced the next evening. Both cars were in the driveway, which meant they were home. I sat in my car for a few minutes, gathering my courage, then walked up to the front door and knocked. My mom answered, her expression wary. "Nora, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you and Vanessa. Both of you." "I don't think that's a good idea right now." "I don't care if it's a good idea. We're talking. Now." Something in my voice must have convinced her, because she stepped aside and let me in. The house looked the same as always, cluttered but not dirty, lived in. Vanessa was sprawled on the couch watching TV, and she sat up quickly when she saw me. "What are you doing here?" "We're having a conversation, all 3 of us." My mom sat down in her usual armchair, and I remained standing. I wanted the height advantage, wanted them to understand that I wasn't there to be pushed around anymore. "I've been hearing some interesting things," I began. "About how you've been talking about me, Vanessa. About how you've been bragging to your coworkers about how your sister pays for everything." Vanessa's face flushed. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me. I have messages. I have proof." She glanced at my mom, who looked equally uncomfortable. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "I'm going to tell you exactly how much money I've spent supporting this household over the past 4 years, and then you're both going to apologize. Not because I'm demanding it, but because it's the right thing to do." "Nora," my mom started. "I'm not finished. I've paid your electric bill for 3 years. That's over $6,000. I've given you money for groceries, for car repairs, for medical bills, for Vanessa's credit card payments. Altogether, I've given you over $15,000 in the past 4 years. $15,000 that I could have used to pay off my student loans, or save for a house, or literally anything else." The number hung in the air between us. I'd never actually calculated it before, but saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been when it was just scattered payments over time. "I didn't realize it was that much," my mom said quietly. "Of course you didn't, because you never asked. You just assumed I'd keep giving." Vanessa was staring at her hands, her face still red. "I saved the voice note," I said, pulling out my phone. "The one where you laughed about how I'd cover the bills anyway. Should I play it?" "No," Vanessa said quickly. "Don't." "Why not? You said it. You should own it. I was wrong, okay? I was wrong. I shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have thought it. But you did. And you know what the worst part is? You've been laughing about this at work, making fun of me to your coworkers, treating my kindness like it's something to mock." Tears were streaming down Vanessa's face now. "I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. That's the problem. You never think about how things make other people feel. You only think about yourself." I turned to my mom. "And you enabled this. You let Vanessa think it was okay to treat me this way because you treat me this way too. You've always put her first. You've always expected me to be the strong one, the responsible one, while she gets to do whatever she wants. My mom's eyes were wet. I never meant to make you feel that way. But you did, and now we're here. The room was silent except for Vanessa's quiet crying. I'm not going to pay your bills anymore, I said. I'm not going to give you money when you ask. I'm not going to be your backup plan. You're both adults, and you need to figure this out on your own. Nora, please, my mom started. I'm not done. I also need you to tell everyone in the family the truth. Tell them that I didn't cut you off for no reason. Tell them about the years of financial support. Tell them about the voice note. Tell them everything. You're asking us to humiliate ourselves. I'm asking you to be honest. That's not the same thing. I turned to leave, then stopped at the door. One more thing. If I ever hear that you're talking about me behind my back again, if I hear that you're making fun of me or lying about what happened, I will post every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of evidence I have. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of people you are. Do we understand each other? They both nodded, silent. I walked out and drove home, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I'd done it. I'd confronted them. I'd said everything I needed to say. But I knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The confrontation at my mom's house changed something fundamental. For the first time in my life, I'd stopped trying to manage their feelings and just told the truth. The weight that had been pressing on my chest for years lifted slightly, enough that I could finally breathe. But the aftermath was complicated. My mom called me 2 days later. Her voice was small when I answered. Nora, I've been thinking about what you said, about the money and everything. I waited, not making it easier for her. I talked to Vanessa. We're going to tell Aunt Patricia the truth, about how much you've helped us over the years. And we're going to stop telling people that you abandoned us. You're right. That's not what happened. It wasn't the full apology I wanted, but it was something. Thank you, I said quietly. I also wanted to say that I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much pressure I was putting on you. I just thought because you had a good job and you were doing well, you didn't mind helping. I did mind. I just didn't know how to say no to you. She was quiet for a moment. I should have asked instead of assuming. That wasn't fair to you. We talked for another 20 minutes, the longest real conversation we'd had in years. She told me about her own financial stress, about how scared she'd been after my dad left, about how she'd leaned on me because I seemed so capable. I told her about the resentment that had been building, about feeling invisible and taken for granted. It wasn't perfect. It didn't fix everything. But it was a start. Vanessa was a different story. She didn't call, didn't text. According to my mom, she was embarrassed and didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap between us. But a bigger part of me knew that this time, she needed to be the one to make the first move. 3 weeks passed. I focused on my work, spent time with Jessica, and started looking into taking a vacation for the first time in 5 years. I'd always told myself I couldn't afford it, but now I realized I'd been spending my vacation money on my family instead. Then one Saturday morning, my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and when I looked through the peephole, I saw Vanessa standing on my porch. I opened the door cautiously. Hey. She looked nervous, her hands shoved into the pockets of her jacket. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let her in. We sat in my living room, the silence awkward between us. I've been trying to figure out what to say, she finally started. I've written like 10 different texts and deleted all of them. So why are you here now? Because Mom said I needed to apologize in person, and she's right. She took a deep breath. Nora, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the voice note, for bragging at work, for all of it. I was treating you like a bank instead of a sister, and that was wrong. I studied her face, trying to determine if she really meant it, or if this was just another performance. I've been thinking about what you said, she continued, about how I never ask about your life. You're right, I don't. I only call when I need something, and that's messed up. I took advantage of you because you always said yes, and I never stopped to think about what it was costing you. Do you understand why I had to stop? Yeah, I do now. I didn't before, but I get it. You can't keep lighting yourself on fire to keep us warm. That's what Mom said you told her. She told you that? She told me a lot of things, like how much money you've actually given us over the years. I didn't know it was that much, Nora. I swear I didn't. You never asked. She flinched. I know, and that's on me. We sat in silence for a moment. I wanted to believe her, wanted to think that this conversation marked a real change, but I'd been disappointed too many times before. I'm not going back to how things were, I said firmly. I'm not going to be your safety net anymore. If you need help, you need to figure it out yourself, or ask Mom, or get a better job, but not me. I know. I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking if we can try to have an actual relationship, like sisters, not like a bank and a customer. I considered this. I'd like that. But it's going to take time, Vanessa. You hurt me. A lot. And it's not something I can just get over because you apologized. I understand. I'll wait. However long it takes. She left a few minutes later, and I sat on my couch feeling oddly hopeful. Maybe she really did understand. Maybe things really could be different, but I'd learned to protect myself. I'd learned that people could say all the right things and still fall back into old patterns. So I decided to test it. Over the next month, I didn't reach out to Vanessa at all. I wanted to see if she'd actually follow through on her promise to build a real relationship, or if she'd disappear again until she needed something. She surprised me. She texted me randomly throughout the week, sending me funny videos or asking about my day. She invited me to lunch and insisted on paying. She showed genuine interest when I talked about work or my plans for a vacation. Small things, but they added up. 6 weeks after her apology, we met for coffee. She looked different somehow, more tired but also more grounded. I got a second job, she told me. Retail, 3 nights a week. It sucks, but the money helps. That's good. Mom and I have been talking about me maybe getting my own place. Nothing fancy, just a studio or something. But I need to save up first. I felt a flicker of pride. That's a big step. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. I've gotten used to not having to worry about money because I always knew you'd cover things. But I think I needed this. I needed to grow up. I'm glad you're figuring it out. She stirred her coffee, not meeting my eyes. Can I ask you something? Sure. Are you ever going to forgive me? Like really forgive me? I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe. But trust takes time to rebuild, and you broke mine pretty badly. I know. I'm trying to show you I've changed. I just hope it's enough. 2 months after Vanessa's apology, I got a call from Aunt Patricia. Her tone was different this time. Less judgmental, more curious. Nora, your mother told me what really happened, about the money and everything. Did she? She did, and I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have assumed you were in the wrong without hearing your side. It was gratifying to hear, but it also felt too little, too late. I appreciate that. I also wanted to tell you that I talked to Vanessa. She seems different, more mature. She's trying. That's good. I'm glad you two are working things out. After we hung up, I realized that the narrative had finally shifted. My family was starting to see me as something other than the reliable workhorse who existed to solve their problems. They were seeing me as a person with limits and needs of my own. At work, I threw myself into a major project that had the potential for a promotion if I handled it well. My supervisor, a woman named Diane, had been impressed with my recent performance. "You seem different lately," she said during a one-on-one meeting. "More focused, more confident. I've been working on setting better boundaries in my personal life. I think it's helping me professionally too. Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. I'm recommending you for the senior analyst position that's opening next quarter." The news should have thrilled me, but instead, I felt a strange mix of excitement and caution. A promotion meant more money, which was great, but it also meant my family might think I had even more to give. That evening, I called Derek. We'd been talking more regularly since our lunch, and he'd become an unexpected source of support. "I got recommended for a promotion," I told him. "That's amazing. Congratulations." "Thanks, but I'm worried about telling my mom and Vanessa. What if they think it means I can start helping them again?" He was quiet for a moment. "Do you want to help them again?" "No. Maybe occasionally if it's a real emergency, but not like before. Never like before." "Then don't. You've set your boundaries. Stick to them." "What if they get mad?" "Let them be mad. You're allowed to have success without it becoming everyone else's opportunity." His words stuck with me. I'd spent so much of my life worrying about other people's reactions that I'd forgotten I had the right to just live my life. I decided not to tell my family about the potential promotion until it was official. And when it did come through 3 months later, I shared the news, but made it clear that my financial situation hadn't changed regarding them. "That's wonderful, honey," my mom said when I told her. "I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom." There was a pause, and I could tell she was deciding whether to ask for something. "I'm managing my own bills now," I added quickly. "This promotion helps, but I'm putting the extra money toward my student loans and savings." "Of course. I wasn't going to ask you for anything. I'm happy for you, that's all." And surprisingly, I believed her. Vanessa's reaction was similar. She congratulated me, asked what the new position entailed, and didn't make any hints about money. It felt almost surreal. The holidays approached, and I dreaded them. Thanksgiving had always been at my mom's house, with various relatives showing up for dinner. I couldn't imagine sitting through an entire meal with everyone knowing what had happened. But my mom surprised me by suggesting we have a smaller gathering this year, just her, Vanessa, and me. "I think we could use some time together without the whole family watching," she said, when she called to invite me. "What do you think?" "I think that sounds nice." Thanksgiving Day was awkward at first. We moved around the kitchen carefully, like we were walking on ice that might crack at any moment. But gradually, we fell into an easier rhythm. Vanessa made jokes. My mom told stories from when we were kids. I helped with the cooking and actually enjoyed it. After dinner, as we sat in the living room with our plates of pie, my mom cleared her throat. "I want to say something to both of you." She looked at me, then at Vanessa. "I made a lot of mistakes raising you girls. I put too much pressure on Nora and not enough on Vanessa. I created an unfair dynamic, and I'm sorry for that." Vanessa nodded. "I'm sorry too. For everything." They both looked at me, waiting. "I forgive you," I said, and realized I meant it. I'm not saying everything's perfect now or that I'm going back to how things were, but I forgive you. My mom's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you." We spent the rest of the evening talking about the future instead of the past. Vanessa told us about her plans to enroll in some online classes, maybe finish her degree. My mom talked about maybe getting a full-time job now that she was feeling stronger. I shared my thoughts about eventually buying a house. For the first time in years, We felt like a family instead of a collection of obligations and resentments. As I drove home that night, I thought about the voice note that had started everything. She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. That version of me was gone. I wasn't the person who always said yes anymore, who sacrificed herself to keep others comfortable. I was someone new, someone with boundaries, someone who valued herself. And that was worth more than any amount of money I'd ever given away. Spring came, and with it, real change. Vanessa moved into a small apartment across town, paying for it with money she'd saved from her 2 jobs. My mom found steady work as an administrative assistant at a doctor's office. They were managing their own bills, their own lives, without me. And I was thriving. The promotion came with a significant pay increase, and for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. I paid off a large chunk of my student loans. I built up my emergency fund. I booked a trip to Colorado to visit Jessica, who'd moved there for a new job. But more than the financial freedom, I felt emotionally lighter. The resentment that had been eating away at me for years was gone. I'd set boundaries, enforced them, and survived the fallout. My family hadn't disowned me. They'd adapted. 6 months after the confrontation at my mom's house, Vanessa invited me to her apartment for dinner. She'd actually cooked, and the place was small but clean, and undeniably hers. "I'm proud of you," I told her, as we ate pasta at her tiny kitchen table. She smiled. "I'm proud of me too. I didn't think I could do this on my own, but I'm managing." "You're doing more than managing. You're actually thriving." I have my moments, like last week when I had to choose between buying groceries and getting my hair done, and I chose groceries. That was a real adult moment. I laughed. "Welcome to adulthood. It's not so bad once you get used to it." We talked for hours that night, about everything and nothing. She told me about a guy she was seeing, someone she'd met at her retail job. I told her about the house I was thinking about buying, how I'd been looking at listings online. "You should do it," she said. "Buy the house. You've earned it." "Maybe. I'm still thinking about it. Don't think too much. You deserve good things, Nora." Coming from her, those words meant more than she probably knew. A few weeks later, my mom invited me to lunch. We met at a small cafe near her work, and she looked happier than I'd seen her in years. "I wanted to tell you something," she said after we'd ordered. "I've been seeing a therapist for the past 2 months." "Really?" "Yeah. After everything that happened, I realized I needed to work on myself. Figure out why I treated you the way I did, why I played favorites so much." "What have you learned?" She stirred her iced tea, considering. "A lot of things, but mostly that I put too much of myself into Vanessa because I saw her as fragile. And I took you for granted because you were so strong. I made you into this pillar that I could lean on without ever stopping to think about whether you wanted that role. I didn't. I know that now, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. I appreciate that, Mom. I also want you to know that I'm working on being more independent. Not relying on anyone to save me. It's hard, but it's good." We talked about her therapy, her job, her plans for the future. She told me she'd started dating someone, a man she'd met at work. She seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. "I'm happy for you," I said, and meant it. "I'm happy for you too, sweetheart. You're doing so well." As summer approached, I finally pulled the trigger on a house. It was a small 2-bedroom cottage on the outskirts of Portland, with a backyard and a front porch where I could drink my morning coffee. It needed some work, but it was mine. Vanessa and my mom both helped me move in, along with Derek and Jessica, who drove up for the weekend. We spent the day hauling boxes and assembling furniture, and by evening, we were exhausted and happy. "Your first house," my mom said, looking around the living room. "I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Mom." Vanessa handed me a wrapped gift. "We got you something. For the house." I unwrapped it to find a framed photo of the three of us from Thanksgiving, all of us smiling at the camera. On the bottom, Vanessa had written, "Family isn't about who supports who. It's about who shows up." I felt tears prick my eyes. Thank you, both of you. We ordered pizza that night and sat on my new porch watching the sunset. Derek told terrible jokes. Jessica complained about her awful boss. My mom talked about her boyfriend. Vanessa showed us photos of her apartment, and I realized that this moment, this peace, was what I'd been fighting for all along. Not to punish anyone or prove a point, but to create space for something healthier to grow. The voice note was still saved on my phone. Sometimes I listened to it, not out of anger anymore, but as a reminder of how far we'd all come. She'll cover the bills anyway. She always does. But that person didn't exist anymore. As for my mom and Vanessa, the consequences of their behavior had been swift and necessary. My mom had to face the reality of her favoritism and the damage it caused, working through her issues in therapy while learning to stand on her own financially. Vanessa experienced the harsh wake-up call of true independence, struggling through the first months of managing her own life before finally finding her footing. They'd both lost my automatic support, their safety net, and had to rebuild their lives from a place of accountability rather than entitlement. The family members who judged me eventually learned the truth, and several of them reached out to apologize for taking sides without knowing the full story. Aunt Patricia admitted she'd been wrong to pressure me, and even sent me a card congratulating me on my new house. The shift in how people saw the situation was its own form of justice. I stood on my porch that evening, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, and thought about revenge. People think revenge has to be dramatic, destructive, a burning bridge you can never rebuild. But sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be used anymore. It's setting boundaries and watching people either respect them or reveal their true priorities. It's building a life you're proud of, instead of one that serves everyone else. I'd gotten my revenge the moment I canceled that payment and watched their lights go out. Everything after that was just me learning to choose myself again and again until it became habit instead of rebellion. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all.